everybody has the same amount of time during the off season. So the question shouldn't be, does what I'm doing work or does it not work? Because for the most part, if you have a basketball in your hands, you're probably going to get at least a little bit better, no matter what it is that you're doing. The question we have to ask ourselves is this the best way that I can maximize the time that I have? Because ultimately, the players who are going to succeed, who are going to succeed the most, are the ones who maximize their time. We've all got the same amount of time in a day in an off season. How can I make sure that I get the most amount of improvement out of the things that I do with my time? So we have to find a way to make sure we answer that question, create a plan that follows the solution or the path that we've come to, and then we have to be able to stick to that. And if you can do that, you can make this a really, really good offseason for yourself. So right now I'm going to talk about the three areas you need to focus on, kind of the order in which you need to prioritize them. And then I'm going to give you just a step-by-step plan in terms of how to structure your offseason to make sure that whatever your goals are for next year, that you give yourself the best chance possible to reach those goals and get as good as you possibly can. And I know that for sure this video is probably going to be a little backwards, or going to seem a little backwards to a lot of players who watch it. But stick with me, because this is what I've learned over years and years of working. Not obviously I go back to how I started, which was I just was obsessed with this for myself. But then as I got into training, players from all different levels, middle school, high school, college, professional, and then getting into coaching at the varsity level as an assistant, on a staff that helped develop a lot of players. And then as a head coach now myself, I've learned a lot in terms of what works, what doesn't work, and how to have a successful offseason. So really you can boil it down to three specific categories you need to focus on if you want to make sure that you're covering all your bases. And the first category is athletic development, strength, and your overall just general athleticism. When I look at players or when I coach players, almost always the first limiting factor that they get to is athleticism or strength. They might have all the skills in the world. They might work on their game, on their skills all the time. They might be really smart. Maybe they play a lot of basketball. But if you are not strong enough to drive to the basket and not get pushed off your line, if you're not strong enough to be able to drive past a hand check, if you're not strong enough to be able to get to the rim and finish through contact, then it doesn't matter how good you are. It doesn't matter how skilled you are. It doesn't matter how smart you are. If you're limited by your athleticism, nothing else is going to matter for you. So this is why this is the area that I want to touch on first, because usually it's the area that players, it's almost backwards. Players usually focus on this the least. When we talk about stuff in the weight room, overall developing athleticism, they get so focused on skill and how do I become a better shooter, better ball handler, and they get so caught up in spending all their time and energy on that. And this is like on the back burner where they either don't do it or they do it when they can. And the problem with that is that the first limiting factor you're going to get to is this. And this is what's going to prevent you from getting to that next level. So I put this first because if you start to focus on this, you're going to notice the most amount of improvement in the shortest amount of time from the majority of players out there. The game is going to become so much easier for you, and your skills and your IQ and your understanding of how to play the game is all of a sudden going to matter so much more. And you're going to be a way better player because of it. And going along with that, it's going to immediately make you a way better defender, way better rebounder. And those are two areas where a lot of players will ask, well, how do I get more playing time? How do I get a bigger role? How do I make it to the next level? How do I achieve this? Whatever. And a lot of times they might not even know it, but if they were better on defense and better as a rebounder, they probably would be more successful or more likely to achieve that goal that they might have for themselves. So we can take care of a lot of that just by getting stronger and getting more athletic. Now, I'm going to make this as simple as possible because we're training to be great at basketball. We're not training to, be in the Olympics for weightlifting or become Mr. Olympia or, face off in any sort of powerlifting competition. So we don't have to do anything crazy complex here. When we talk about developing strength, getting stronger, we want to focus on compound lifts, which just means that we're lifting with multiple joints at the same time. So we talk about upper body compound lifts. That's like thinking push and pull. When we do this, we're getting the most bang for our buck because we're working the most amount of muscle groups and we're able to lift the most amount of weight, which is going to lead to the most amount of strength gains in the least amount of time. So we talk about upper body compound lifts. This would be push exercises like, the bench press is a simple one, shoulder press. We have like a vertical press with the shoulder, horizontal with the bench. If you do those two movements consistently, get really, really strong at those things, you're going to have a stronger upper body. And then we talk about pull movements and the compound lifts. We have like the vertical pull, so that could be like a pull up. You could do even like a weighted pull up as well to make it more difficult. You can do a lat pull down with a machine or whatever. Another great way to get the vertical pull, another compound movement. And then we can do horizontal pulls. So this would be like a bent over row. So focusing on getting into the gym, and maybe 2 times a week you work on upper body lifts, and those are just your compound movements. Maybe on the first day you do 2 push exercises, 2 pull exercises. Then the other day that you do your upper body, you do 2 and 2 again. Could be the same ones, could be different ones. Doesn't really matter. Like I said, this doesn't have to be anything complex. This means, do you show up and do it consistently, and do you try and lift more weight as you progress on, right? If you get stuck at the same weight, you're not going to get stronger. So once you feel like you have a good feel for it, and your form is good, and you feel confident, do you then start to try and challenge yourself with how much weight you can do? Now, I'll link a full video here that kind of goes more in depth into the whole weightlifting aspect of it, but that's the first part of it, is compound lifts, upper body. Can we do that consistently? And then obviously lower body as well. We have our compound lifts would be like your squat, could be a lunge, could be a deadlift, though a lot of times that deadlift's a little bit more difficult to execute properly. So that's probably one where if you don't have a good feel, or you're not able to be around somebody who can teach you or can help you like learn the form of it, not one where you have to do it. But squats, lunges are pretty simple ones to do, and those are great compound movements right there. We can also look at like an RDL or a straight-legged deadlift. We could do that with like one leg right there. And then the leg press is another great type of compound lift that we can use for our lower body. And then ideally, we also would do some core work as well. I love using the ab roller as a great way to increase your core strength. You can also do this with like an exercise ball as well. And then doing stuff like farmer's walks or suitcase carries are great ways as well to challenge your core strength. And so then adding in maybe one of those every other day, or every day, even if you want to, just being consistent with your core work as well. If you can focus on doing that, getting stronger in your upper body compound lifts, your lower body compound lifts, and then your core work. If you do those things consistently, you're going to become stronger, and that's going to translate to you having way more success on the basketball court, getting rid of that strength being a limiting factor, which it is for probably the majority of players that I'm around. Now, that's one aspect of athletic development. The other aspect is your actual like athleticism. We think of it in like the generic term. So how fast do you run? How high do you jump? And that's probably one of the biggest areas for players. So how do I jump higher? I want to dunk. I want to do all these things. And I know for me, I was definitely focused on all that when I was a younger player as well. Again, I want to make this as simple as possible. I don't want you to overthink it. I don't want you to feel like, oh, this is so complicated, how I'm going to do it all. If you want to get better at anything, do it. And that seems so simple, but when it comes to becoming a better athlete, the 2 things you can do for yourself that are going to make you way more athletic is maybe 2 or 3 times a week. You need to have times where you just straight up jump as high as you can and sprint as fast as you can. How you could do this would be like maybe before your lifts, or if it's an upper body day, you could do it after. You could do it before your skill workout. Maybe you say, okay, I'm going to sprint from the baseline to half court, and I'm not sprinting in terms of like what you would do in a practice where you're doing like a 17 or something for conditioning. We're trying to get to max speed. And I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to sprint from baseline to half court as fast as I can. And then I might give myself like a minute and a half, 2-minute break if I need to, whatever is going to get me back to 100%. So that then I'm going to go back. Maybe I'll do 5 sprints, or maybe I'll do 10 sprints, where I'm just focusing on getting to my peak speed and then fully recovering, just being as fast as possible. So again, you shouldn't be tired from like a cardio perspective. This is just working on max output. And so it can be as simple as 5 max sprints from baseline to half court, or any sort of distance. If you're on a basketball court, it could be outside, whatever. We don't want to sprint for like an extended amount of time. We want it to be kind of a short distance. And so maybe you say on Monday, you're going to do 5 sprints, and then on Wednesday, you're going to do 5 sprints. And now we have 10 max output sprints every single week. You stack that up over weeks, you're going to get faster, because you're working on actually being fast, and your body's going to adapt. And then also, as you get stronger with your lifting, it's going to now allow you to have more strength to be able to put into that sprint speed, and you're going to get faster because of it. And then going with that, the other aspect of it is jumping. So you need to have times where you just work on max jumping. And a lot of times players will jump during their skill workouts, when they're playing, but rarely is that like 100% max effort, max height jump. Usually it's anywhere from 60 to 90% of their maximum because you're going for a layup or you're going for a rebound or something like that. So we might do on maybe the Tuesday and Thursday, the days we're not sprinting, or it could be on the same day if you wanted it to be. We're going to do 3 sets of 5 max approach jumps where all I'm going to do is I'm going to take a couple steps and I'm just going to run and jump as high as I can. And you could do this off of one leg. If you're more of a one leg jumper, you could do it off of 2 feet. You're more of a 2-foot jumper. But all we're going to do is I'm going to take as high a jump as possible. I'm going to give myself a few seconds to recover so that I feel kind of close to 100%. I'm going to do that 5 times. Then I'm going to give myself like 2-3 minutes of a break. I'm going to do another set of those 5 jumps, another break, and then another set of those 5 jumps. And then those are my max jumping outputs for that day. And again, we do that twice a week. We stack it up over weeks and weeks and weeks. You're going to start to jump higher. You're going to become a better athlete. So now we've covered all our bases. We're getting stronger, and we're also getting more athletic because we're working on our max output in sprints and in jumping. Like I said, athletic development is a huge limiting factor. That needs to be at the forefront of what you focus on if you want this to be a successful offseason, if you want to come back the next year and be a better player. Get stronger, get more athletic, and make sure that that is a big priority for you. Now, the next area that's super important, probably equally as important as athletic development, is game development. When we think of basketball and what your purpose is here, like I mentioned with the athletic development, we're not training to become an Olympic power lifter. We're training to get better at basketball. Everything that we do is about getting better at playing the game, which is a 5-on-5 game. You could think of this like learning a language. You can be in Spanish class, and you can work on memorizing vocab and learning how to conjugate different verbs. That doesn't mean that you can just be put down in a Spanish-speaking country and be able to communicate at a high level. You're probably going to have to be put into that country and struggle through learning, okay, how do I actually hear what's being said to me? How do I, in my mind, construct an answer? And then when I say that, how do I respond to what they say back to me? How do I start having full conversations? It's very different from sitting in Spanish class and learning vocab and all that sort of stuff right there. If you're training to fight in a boxing match, there's only so much that hitting a punching bag or working on your footwork by yourself is going to get you, because when you get in the ring and there's somebody else who's actually swinging back at you and you have to react and adjust and figure out, okay, well, I have this reach, they have that reach, how far can I be? How fast do I have to move? How fast do they swing? That's a completely different beast. Mike Tyson has a famous quote that says, everybody's got to play until they get punched in the mouth. When you're actually in that situation, you get punched in the mouth, it's very different than, being by yourself and working on hitting a punching bag that can't hit back. I say all that because the most important part of basketball is not the skill workouts, getting your shots up, getting your ball handling in. The most important thing is actually knowing how to execute those things in a real game. That's the only thing that matters. And that right there has got to be at the forefront of everything that you do. So if we want to learn how to play the game at a high level and we want to focus on game development, the number one thing that we can do is play. We got to play as much as possible. In the offseason, you've got to be playing as much as you can. This is why, like the high school team I coach, I push my players to play AAU. And I know there's a lot of coaches out there who are kind of anti-AAU, and that could be for a whole bunch of different reasons. They think that it's bad basketball, or they think that, they don't have any control over their players then. And there's bad programs out there. I'm not going to say that. Trust me, I know there are bad AAU programs out there that I wouldn't want my own players playing in. But generally, I want my players to go play AAU because they're going to be playing basketball. And that's how they're going to get better at being in game situations, is by being in those situations as much as they can be. So go play AAU. Play for the best team you can play for, the highest level you can play for. Now, assuming that means that you're still actually getting playing time. Don't go play somewhere where you're sitting on the bench because of the name on the jersey, right? Don't do that. Go somewhere you're actually going to play and get experience. That's a really important thing that you should do. And the majority of serious players are playing AAU. But then on top of that, you want to have times where you're in more of like a free play sort of environment where you're able to try things out. You're able to learn what works for you. If you're trying to improve in a certain area over the offseason, you can focus on doing that. So you want to play as much pickup as you can. Ideally 5-on-5. Again, we're training to be good in a 5-on-5 game. So as often as you can go play pickup. Again, ideally it's with the best players that you possibly can play with. Just getting in and playing as much as you can. Now that's 5-on-5. That could also be 1-on-1 where one-on-one you learn, okay, I'm going to try and work on this finish. I'm going to try and work on this specific move. I'm going to try and work on this shot. 2-on-2, 3-on-3. You want to see defense as often as you possibly can. And that's how you learn how to actually be good in game situations, and that's what game development is all about right there. There's another way that we can also supercharge our game development. I talked about in the last video that I just put out about how the majority of players could be getting better at a rate that's probably twice as fast as the rate that they're currently getting better at. I noticed that everyone in the comments was like, wow, this is actually a really, really good point, because a lot of players only look at their skill workout, which is an hour or two a day, and maybe if they go play an hour or two, or if they go lift an hour to, like, they're only looking at them at the time that they spend on the court or in the weight room. And to them, though, that is when they get better. And they neglect all the other time that they have outside of just the court. So you're limited to 3 or 4 hours a day at most of getting better. There's so much more that you can do, specifically from a game development perspective, if you want to actually maximize your time this offseason. And this just goes into the power of mirror neurons, which is basically just your brain's ability to watch a behavior and kind of simulate that in your own mind, almost as if you were the one who's performing that action, which allows you to get onto the court and then be able to perform that action much more easily, much more naturally than you would if you hadn't watched it. And so how do we use that? Well, number one is watch as much basketball as possible. So get on TNT or ESPN and watch full NBA games, watch college games. Obviously, we got March Madness coming up here, so there's a lot of opportunities to do that. Watch high school games, watch EuroLeague games, watch WNBA games. Go and watch full games. When you watch a full game, you also get to kind of see the flow of things. You can see basketball IQ in different situations. You get to see why different players do different things depending on who their matchup is or what, part of the game it's in or who else is on the court. And so you learn a lot just by watching as much basketball as possible. You also can learn a ton, and in some cases even more, by watching specific players. So you can watch highlights of maybe players who you play similar to or play at the same position as you. You want to get better at a certain skill. You want to get better at finishing. So you go on YouTube and you look up Steph Curry finishing highlights or Trae Young finishing highlights or Jalen Brunson finishing highlights. And you see, okay, he did that in this situation and that allowed him to finish that ball. Why did he do that? And by doing those things, again, your brain is firing and simulating in your own mind. Something you can think about is almost placing yourself, like in your mind, visualizing yourself in that same situation and you actually finishing it that way. Or maybe in your mind, another situation pops up where you got blocked or where you lost the ball or you missed a layup and you think to yourself, well, here's how I could have adjusted right there to be successful. Now, the next time you get into that situation, you're much more likely to actually make the right decision or use the right option. And that's just a great way that you can get better at basketball without even being on the court. A lot of players aren't doing that because once they're off the court, they're not even thinking about basketball anymore. They're thinking about playing video games or watching TV or sleeping or just doing whatever else. And I'm not saying you got to do this for 10 hours a day, but taking time and watching and studying and visualizing and seeing, hey, how can I be better? Who can I learn from? That's the best way for you to be able to maximize your time throughout the offseason because most players aren't doing that. So study great ball handlers, study great shooters, study great finishers, great drivers, great passers, all that sort of stuff right there. And then the next piece of that is learning the details of the game. So learning different actions and how to utilize them, learning how to create advantages, the best times to attack, to shoot, to pass. And when you do this, the game is going to start to become way more natural for you. It's going to come easier to you. When you understand, okay, this guy tight curled off of that pin down and it led to this. Why did he do that? He did that because his defender chased him over. Or this guy did this coming off of a ball screen. Why did he do this? This guy cut backdoor on the wing. Why? And how can I now apply that when I'm playing here? And that's stuff that's going to help you so much. I talk about it all the time, but I've gotten better at basketball since I've stopped playing. And it's because I just watch the game so much. I'm around the game a ton, whether it's training, coaching, but I spend so much time watching that I get onto the court and I just have a better feel for when to do what and what's open and what options I have. And I see so much more. There's a term called affordances, which just means that you can only act on the things that you can actually see or that you know. If you don't have the ability or you don't know that something is possible, you're never going to be able to do that thing. For example, Shaq sees the game completely different than Trae Young sees it because Shaq has a different set of affordances than Trae Young does. So Shaq will see a situation and he'll see an opportunity to act or he'll see an option that he can use. Trae Young will be in the same situation. He won't even see the same thing that Shaq sees because he doesn't have those same affordances. He has a different set. Just like Shaq won't see certain options that Trae Young might see in that same situation. So how do we increase our affordances? Obviously, by doing the stuff we talked about with the athletic development, but also we get it by actually understanding the game and knowing what our options could be so that we have the opportunity to act on them right there. And that's where taking time and learning and studying the game will completely transform how you actually see the game, which is going to give you way more options and way more confidence to be successful on the court. I created Basketball IQ Academy, which is my full basketball IQ program, because this is probably the biggest problem in basketball today is that players spend all their time on their skills and they don't actually know how to apply them, when to apply them, or all the opportunities that they're missing on because they just don't see them. And so that's such a major thing that players have to figure out if they want to play at a high level. Probably your biggest focus during the offseason should be on your game development. That means playing, and it means studying the game and learning those intricate details as much as possible. And like I said, most players can be getting better twice as fast as they probably are right now just by making sure that they do those things. I just released a free guide that goes step by step how to do that, how to get better twice as fast as you currently are, and the feedback on it has been really, really good. Like I said, completely free step-by-step guide. Going to tell you how to do that and also just give you like a schedule you can follow every day, whether it's an off day, whether you have school, work, whatever, and it's going to help you to really maximize your development. So something you should definitely take into account this offseason, like I said, top link down below. Now, the third and final area that we'll talk about is skill development. Most of the time, this is the number one area that players are focused on, which is, okay, how do I become a better shooter? What workout should I be doing? What drills should I be doing? And listen, I was the same way. There is certainly value in that. Obviously, we're talking about skill development because it does matter. However, players spend the majority of their time and focus on this area and then wonder why they get back and they aren't that much better, or they aren't that much more successful, they haven't made that much improvement. This is the third most important area, and it's not because it doesn't matter, it's just because athletic development and game development matter so much more than skill development does. And if you don't do those two things, this area almost doesn't even matter at all. Of course, I'm not telling you to not work on your skills. I'm a basketball trainer, so this is what I do. As a coach, we work on skill development in our team practices every single day as well, and there's value in it. I've got shooting programs, ball handling programs, and there's drills and workouts in those that I use every single day with the players that I train and that I coach. But you have to reframe it, and you need to see this as area number 3, because if you don't do number 1 and number 2 consistently, you don't make that a priority, this area is not going to move the needle very much for you. And eventually you're going to hit a ceiling and you're not going to be able to get past that ceiling until areas 1 and 2 become your focus. So this is still something, skill development, that you should be focusing on for probably an hour or 2 a day, most days. When it comes to skill development, my belief is that most players should be spending most of their time on shooting. Like probably for most players, like 80% of their time, maybe even more on that. Shot making is the most important thing in basketball. The game is about who makes more shots at the end of the day. And I always say as a coach, my job is to help you create the shot, and your job is to actually make the shot. If you're doing the first two things, you're focusing on your athletic development, you're focusing on your game development, then you're going to create the opportunities. You're going to have opportunities to put the ball in the basket. And then the question becomes, do you have the physical ability to make the shot? Have you worked on it enough that you can actually put the ball in the basket? So an example of some really simple shooting drills that I do with my team every single day, and I do with the players that I train every single day, we just call it energy transfer shooting, where we're going to start off in the mid-range, and we're just working on being super tall, ball straight out, and then dropping into like the position you would be when you catch the ball, or the bottom of your shot. And then we're getting right back up into our shot. Notice how quick it is. This helps us to work on being able to catch, transfer energy from the ground up into our shot, and build nice rhythm so that we can make shots from wherever. It doesn't matter. We're able to transfer that energy and get up into our shot. So we'll do this straight on. We'll take a step and then drop into it to the right, take a step to the left, do that. And then we'll back up and we'll do the same thing from the 3-point line. Sometimes we'll add like a little self-toss instead of just holding it to start right there. And this alone, if you do this every single day, and it might take you, usually for these we'll do 5 or 10 makes for each variation. So, that could be 60 makes a day if you do it for 10. You could do more or less than that, but if you just do that every single day for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, you're going to become a way more consistent shooter. And on top of that, I like to do drills that really challenge my players. There's something called the Goldilocks zone. We talk about the optimal zone for improvement. All that it means is that we want our training to be not too hard where you're failing and missing every single shot, but we also don't want it to be too easy where you're making every single shot, because if you're making every single shot, there's no reason for you to get better. Going back to the athletic development piece and what I mentioned earlier, if you're lifting the same weights all the time and you never put more weight or add more reps to it, eventually your body doesn't have to put on any more muscle or any more strength, because It's not hard. So why would your body take the time and the energy to build more muscle or build more strength if it doesn't have to? It's going to conserve that energy. And it's the same thing we talk about the process getting better, because all that getting better is a mental process. And your brain is not going to put any sort of energy towards improving the mind muscle connection with a skill if there's no reason to, if there's no challenge. So our drills, we want to have drills that challenge us in order to put ourselves in a zone where we're only succeeding 30 to 70% of the time, so that we have some failure reps, which signals to your brain, hey, we've got to improve at this, or something's wrong. How do I make an adjustment? That's how you actually get better. So we want to do drills that challenge us as well. So a lot of times what we'll do is different drills that might challenge, for example, like our feet might be weird, like anything but normal, a little wide, a little narrow, a little staggered. We might work on shooting with off an unclean catch or off a bad pass. We might work on shooting really fast or against a contest, stuff that is going to make it much more likely that you're going to miss some shots. But when we do that, again, it's going to send that signal to your brain that we got to make an adjustment, and that's how you actually get better at a skill. It's also going to prepare you to make shots when things are imperfect, which is basketball, right? You're not going to shoot perfect shots in an empty gym every single time you're on the court. You're going to have to make some shots where things aren't quite perfect. You're not quite on balance. Your feet aren't quite perfect. The pass isn't quite perfect. There's a closeout, so you got to shoot a little quicker than you might want to. Can you still make that shot in those situations? That's how we become really, really good at something, specifically shooting. Now, something that you can do that's really, really simple to kind of add this to your workouts is, for all of our team practices, is we start off and we just call it DL shooting, which just stands for differential learning. All that it is that our guys will go for 3 sets of 6 shots. This is just shots, not make or miss, just shots. The only rule is that the shot can be anything but normal, meaning something's got to be weird. So the feet have got to be messed up, maybe a little wide, a little narrow, a little staggered. Maybe the way they're holding the ball has got to be weird. The one rule is that it has to be like, if you're a right-handed shooter, you got to shoot with your right hand. That's the one thing that you can't change. We want to make it somewhat accurate in terms of actually preparing us for what you're going to be doing in a game, which is shooting with the hand that you shoot with. We might shoot off of 1 foot, but every single thing that we do is going to be just a little bit different. So again, you're then going to get back to your normal shooting, and it's going to feel so much easier, and you're going to be way more prepared to be able to make shots in games when it's imperfect. We would do that every single day, and as a team, we shot really, really well this year. We made a lot of threes, and a big part of it is because we do this stuff every single day. And so we're prepared to make shots in games right there. Now, when it comes to stuff like ball handling and finishing, again, I think that should be like secondary to working on just making shots. But we talk about ball handling specifically. We want to work on ball control. So a great way of doing this is working on just being able to manipulate the ball. So sometimes we'll use a cone for that. You can use a line for that, just working on being able to pick the ball up almost and place it where we want to place it right there. That's a really important part of ball control. The other aspect of ball handling is like working on being able to freestyle. So just kind of having a ball in your hands as much as possible, being able to string together different combinations. Really simple thing you can do is give yourself a set amount of space and give yourself a time, maybe 15 seconds, where you have to kill every blade of grass in that space if there were grass in there. And we're working on different combinations, going different directions, different speeds, all that sort of stuff. That's how you make the ball feel more natural and your dribble moves feel more natural. And then handling pressure, best way to do that is to go and do this when you play. So back to game development, work on handling the ball. If you don't normally, dribble the ball very much, dribble the ball way more when you play your pickup games, you play your 2-on-2, your 3-on-3, or 1-on-1. That's how you get better at handling pressure. And the same thing in finishing. You want to get better at finishing? Maybe you're normally a shooter, but in your 5-on-5 or your 3-on-3, you say, I could shoot the ball today, but I'm just going to work on driving and getting to the rim and finishing. That's how you're going to get better at finishing as well. Now, when we put those things into perspective right there, and we understand that, hey, priorities have got to be athletic development, game development. If I can really prioritize those and then also have skill development where it's really focused on shooting and making shots, that's how you get better. That's how you become a player who is going to be successful. That's the process you got to follow. And if you want to lock in and get better this offseason, this is the format that you should follow. You do these things consistently, you're going to get so much better. Like I mentioned, most players could be getting better at a rate twice as fast as they are right now. I have a free guide that goes through exactly how you can make sure that you're maximizing your time and getting better way faster. Completely free. Top link in the description down below. Make sure you go check that out. Talk to you soon. Peace.